It's time for a round of Guess That Tweet. Who tweeted this out? By failing to separate the anonymous, cowardly troll demons from real people in the comments section, YouTube and other social media platforms are enabling sadistic Machiavellian psychopaths and narcissists. Was it A, Anita Sarkeesian, B, Andrew Torba, C, any of the breadtubers, or D, Jordan Peterson? Well, you saw the title of the video. You already know it's Jordan Peterson. Peterson's going viral right now for arguing against anonymity online, and he's getting a lot of pushback from the right, who have overwhelmingly taken up the cause of free speech in the past decade after the left discarded it. What's funny is, the tweet does actually sound like something those other people would say. Anita Sarkeesian is a notorious Gamergate-era censor who wanted sexual and violent content stricken out of video games, judging of course from a left-wing perspective, making her a mirror image of the previous big gaming censorship baddie, Jack Thompson on the right. Andrew Torba started Gab in 2016, the alt-tech Twitter, and marketed it as a free speech zone. But as time went on and he radicalized, he began to ban more and more types of speech, first beginning with porn in 2019 and then branching out.
I mean, it's real simple. Pornography is not speech, right?
Breadtubers are just well known for free speech that helps them out and censors their enemies. They're just partisans who have no principles beyond what's good for them. But Jordan Peterson? Why is he taking an anti-anon stance? Peterson's initial boost into the spotlight was specifically over free speech issues, compelled speech in Canada more specifically. This event happened in the wider context of the left abandoning free speech as a virtue back in the early to mid 2010s. As I've said many times before, I was a young lefty, and the left, when I was a part of it, was heavily invested in free speech as a core right. The right wing of the time were the older boomer Christian censors, wanting speech banned in the name of their religion. And it was the left wing who said, no, the First Amendment means everyone can speak, even if it's speech you don't like, even if it's speech you find offensive. But then came the political realignment. As the left gained more and more institutional power, they dropped free speech as a virtue. It was no longer useful to them. Its purpose was to have free speech, use it to subvert institutions and take control, and then ban free speech to protect their new order. And Jordan Peterson is one of the many people who were caught unaware of that shift and slammed into a wall because of it. In fact, that was one of the reasons the pro-Gamergate people felt so betrayed during that 2014 culture war. The wider culture had demonized gamers for decades, using the same arguments that they used on rock and roll and D&D. Gamers expected their enthusiast press to stand up for them, as they had during previous moral panics. But now that it was the ethics of that enthusiast press themselves that was being called into question, they turned on their own audiences. Good faith questions from the gamers were replied to with accusations of sexism and racism on the side of the journos, something that Anita Sarkeesian was a small part of. Yeah, only a small part. I know the narrative nowadays is that she was the centerpiece, but really, having been a part of it myself, Anita inserted herself for clout. Nobody actually cared about her. But the reason I'm going on this side tangent is because a lot of the time, when a free speech advocate runs into speech that they explicitly do not like, or sometimes just after they've gained power, suddenly censorship seems like a good idea. From hate speech is not free speech morons on the left, to what offends me doesn't count as free speech morons on the right, everyone is carving out their own little exceptions to these rules. Hell, some Muslims believe that the old blasphemy laws need to come back, at least for their god.
Anyone else's existence. And that's exactly what mockery is. What the French have done, for example, has actually disrespected our beliefs and our existence, and therefore I don't think it can even be categorized as free speech. Free speech can only be free speech as long as it respects other people.
If anyone is doing a mockery of a religion, of a prophet, do they deserve to pay the ultimate price? Do they deserve to die because of that?
That is a great question, and that actually brings up another concept of death penalty, and I think that's a completely different question right now that you're asking. But at the moment, I think that we should focus on identifying as what they did was wrong, because a lot of people are saying, oh, you know, it's free speech, it's not mockery. I think right now what we need to do is get to the root of the problem. Mockery is not free speech.
What would you suggest as an appropriate penalty for the mockery of a religion or a prophet?
I wouldn't like to comment on this at this time.
And yeah, liberal society does this sort of thing too. We have some concept of slander and defamation. A narrow concept where it requires proving that the speaker knows what they're saying is false and is only saying it to damage their target. But nonetheless, it's still a restriction on speech. Another restriction we accept are credible threats or credible incitement. Credible meaning that the speech will lead to violent action. Believe it or not, though, one type of restriction that everyone thinks we have, but we actually don't, is the whole shouting fire in a crowded theater thing. That's actually allowed. The point is, people who are on the margins of society tend to lean on free speech rights because it benefits them. Free speech is what allows them to spread the word of their unorthodox views. But once the margin becomes the new core, or maybe not even that far, just gain some position of stability or influence, suddenly free speech no longer benefits them, but it hurts them. Now, the new margin can speak and undermine their new rule. From a political realist point of view, calling for free speech when you're losing and calling for censorship along your rules when you're winning is the path to victory. So, is that what Jordan Peterson's doing? I don't know, but we can look at his previous stances on this topic. After Peterson received pushback during his compelled speech controversy, there was a chorus of voices condemning the loss of free speech in academia, especially since that's one of the most important places for free speech to be. Academia is where you're supposed to get challenged, learn new ideas, discover new things through open inquiry, and to see a chilling effect hit the university was scary indeed. And that chilling effect began to spread far beyond just Jordan Peterson's own University of Toronto. The case of Lindsay Shepherd should be one that you all know, at least if you've been watching my channel for the past few years, where back in 2017, in her capacity as a teacher's assistant teaching a class, she brought up Jordan Peterson in an academic context. Shepherd was hauled in front of the head of her academic program, where it was claimed that LGBTQ students had filed complaints against her for talking about Jordan Peterson in a politically neutral manner, which had created a toxic climate for the students. Because, just as you should not talk about, and I quote, Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos in a politically neutral way, the same goes for Jordan Peterson.
So just to give you some context about Jordan Peterson he is a figure that's basically highly involved with the alt-right. He lectures about basically like critiquing feminism, critiquing trans rights.
I mean, I'm familiar. Like
white supremacy.
I follow
him. I'm not critiquing you. Okay, so
the thing is, can you shield people from those ideas? Am I supposed to comfort them and make sure that they are insulated away from this? Like, is that what the point of this is? Because to me, that is so against what a university is about. No. I introduced it critically.
How so? Like
I said, it was in the spirit of debate.
Okay, in the spirit of the debate is slightly different than being like, okay, this is like a problematic idea that we want to unpack.
But that's taking sides.
Yes.
Like, it's taking sides for me to be like, oh, look at this guy. Like, everything that comes out of his mouth is BS, but we're gonna watch anyway.
Okay. So I understand the position that you're coming from and your positionality. But the reality is that it has created a toxic climate for some of the students.
How many?
It's great that...
Ooh, like how many?
Okay.
One?
May I speak?
I have no concept of like how many people complained, like what their complaint was. You haven't showed me the complaint.
Yes, I understand that this is upsetting, but there's also confidentiality matters.
The number of people is confidential?
Yes.
I don't see what's transphobic about showing a video of Jordan Peterson. He's a real person. He's out there.
He is a real person, but he is a real person who has engaged in targeted behavior that, or targeting of trans students. This is basically like neutrally playing a speech by Hitler or Milo Yiannopoulos from Gamergate.
Shepherd was threatened with disciplinary action if she didn't comply with the university's demands, but an investigation later discovered that no complaint had actually been filed by any student, and she had not violated any school policy. It turns out the entire thing was cooked up by her academic supervisor, Nathan Rambuchanan, who had his own leftist political bias. Lindsay Shepherd's censure is just one example of many. How many times have people pulled fire alarms or called in bomb threats on speakers that they didn't politically align with, generally right-leaning speakers and left-leaning protesters? Again, as somebody who was lefty before I grew up, that was wild for me to witness, the left suddenly being against academic freedom. It's at the point where, for example, UBC gave a questionnaire asking students about the morality of Jordan Peterson's free speech stance, and students overwhelmingly didn't trust that the school wouldn't punish them for saying other than, "I disagree." So, Jordan Peterson, until the tweet that we're talking about today, has pretty much universally come down on the free speech side of things, even as a storm raged around him over his commitment to that stance. And he has faced some true ugliness for that commitment. When he destroyed Cathy Newman in a debate back in 2018, he was considered a misogynist for not just bending over and letting her have her way with him. And Newman continued to play the victim card for years afterwards. Countless no-names have called him an incel, a misogynist, a men's rights activist, a fascist, a racist, a transphobe, whatever. They took every single thing the left claims to hate and just tarred and feathered him with it to see what would stick. And when they finally found something they could actually hurt him with, namely his wife's cancer diagnosis, her near-death experience, and his resulting drug addiction, they latched onto that for all that it was fucking worth. I am not surprised he came out of that experience a significantly more negative man than he was before. It's no secret that I once liked Jordan Peterson quite a lot. His psychology takes are still top tier, and most of what he says otherwise is useful, if a bit generic, self-help stuff. But it's after the Elliot Page thing a few months back that I feel like he really began to lose the plot. I still listen to his old speeches occasionally too, they're quite good, but he seems a lot more cynical now, a lot more cold to the world. Which brings us back to his original tweet, his sudden reversal on free speech. Only not exactly. He's talking about being anonymous here, not free speech. In 2021, I did a 30-minute video detailing the link between those two concepts. I don't want to go over it entirely again or re-show all the examples in that video of various agents, both government and private, who are salivating at the opportunity to de-anonymize people for political ends. So I'd recommend you go check that one out if you're interested. The TLDR is, we've known for a while that anonymous speech is required to speak truth to power. Power has its own ways of defending itself and promoting its interests, while the common person is easily destroyed by power. Anonymity is necessary for the common person to have a voice, to be able to speak freely and criticize those in power. Whenever those in power come for free speech, they start by coming for anonymous speech. The first rule of the internet when I was young was don't tell people your real name or address. You don't know who's out there. You don't know who's saving your info. Keep what is private, private. That ethic was washed away by the popularity of social media. The convenience and novelty of being able to find old classmates on Facebook or tweet at your favorite celebs on Twitter outweighed any privacy concerns. And while older people like me might grumble at the slow encroachment of these services, from having to provide Twitter with a phone number or having to show Facebook a photo ID, we complied because everybody is on these centralized services. And the Zoomers weren't even around to experience what it was like before. To them, TikTok sending China all your data is just a normal thing. Like, why are you complaining? Everyone does this. Well, we're complaining because today's rampant cancel culture did not exist back when anonymity was the default. There are things that I've posted in my past that if they went viral, I would absolutely be banned from everywhere. I'm not even talking about the ICE tweet. That's not even close to how edgy 14-year-old Dev was online. People are getting destroyed as adults over shit they posted on Twitter as a child. Stuff that wouldn't be out of place on Battle.net or Xbox Live back in the day. When it happens to a leftoid like Sarah Jong or something, I laugh because they are the people who wanted this to be the standard in the first place. And now it's backfiring against them. But it should not be the standard. Most people who want to abolish anonymity, and this explicitly does not apply to Jordan Peterson, desire it for ideological reasons. It's not just getting cancelled for old edgy tweets. Look at how leftoids react when, for example, a 24-year-old has consensual sex with a 36-year-old, or a celebrity gets with a fangirl at a meetup after hours, or hell, an employee works for a boss at a normal-ass job. They're all screaming about power imbalances, to the point that even if the people involved are totally fine and 100% consented to everything, to them it's still an improper relationship. To me, the natural response is, who the fuck are you to stick your nose into my business? But the leftoids don't care about privacy as something to be valued. You all know already, Marx on the Jewish question, where he dismantles the liberal right of association. Well, fast forward through that part of the video, I've talked about it a dozen times already. In the eyes of the left, it's private is not actually reason enough to leave it alone. They reject the very concept of privacy because everything is political. The personal is political. And if it's political, then it's open to public inquiry because that's what politics is, the domain of the public. I will always oppose this logic. Hell, in Canada, the liberal argument for gay rights is explicitly an argument of privacy, where Prime Minister Trudeau, not the current one, his father, famously said, the state has no place in the bedrooms of the nation. To reject privacy rights is to say that the state actually does have a place in the bedrooms of the nation. And that's something that I can't abide by. Abolishing the anonymous is only one such push. Digital ID is a second one. Obviously, you should have an ID if you're going to go vote, but the vote you tally is still a secret one. You still do it in private because you recognize the intimidation factor of having someone look over your shoulder while you cast your ballot. But nonetheless, we've seen a lot of strange ID takes. During COVID, it was all about vaccine passports. Not a vaccine card that you have to show once to sign up for school, but a pass on your phone that you must keep on you at all times, and have it scanned at any place that you go to outside of your house. And in some places, show it to the cops on demand, even as you just walk around town. And that is slowly morphing into a more generalized digital ID, kept on your phone at all times, tracking your locations and activities. I know this sounds like Alex Jones type stuff, and it's not happening yet, but there are absolutely fringe elements pushing for this sort of thing. And in general, we are slowly moving closer to a more surveillance-heavy world. The push for digital money is cut from the same cloth, where some places are looking into abolishing cash entirely in order to more easily track people's purchases. China's even experimented with digital money that has a time limit that you've got to spend or else it vanishes, in order to prevent people from saving up resources. And of course, there's that oft talked about WEF article. It's 2030, I own nothing, I have no privacy, and life has never been better. You know, if Klaus Schwab didn't want people to think he was some insane wannabe dictator looking to consolidate the entire planet under a new world order through mass impoverishment and collectivization of everyone and everything, he probably shouldn't have greenlit something as insane sounding as this. And by the way, this isn't just some WEF brain conspiracy. In the UK, the Criminal Finances Act of 2017 introduced the Unexplained Wealth Order, which allows for the confiscation of property without proving any law was broken by reversing that burden of proof. If you can't prove that you made your money in a way that the government approves of, they will take it from you. And one province in Canada, British Columbia, has recently stated they intend to introduce a similar program. In both cases, they claim it'll only be used to seize the capital gained by organized crime. But it's not hard to see how just such an apparatus can be turned on any citizen should the government suddenly decree that normal behavior is criminal. And again, during COVID, we saw a lot of normal behavior become criminal. All of this stuff flies in the face of privacy, of anonymity, of the right to disconnect from the rest of society and enjoy a private, personal life. The truth is, anonymity is both good and necessary. We already know too much about each other. The phrase, good fences make good neighbors, is known for a reason. I don't buy any of this if you have nothing to fear, then you have nothing to hide nonsense. And I'm honestly surprised that Jordan Peterson is arriving at the anti-anonymous point. Here, Jordan, let me describe the fatal flaw of your position in your own words.
That's the bloody thing. Who's gonna decide? That's the thing.
At the same time, I also recognize the flip side of the argument. It certainly seems ridiculous to me that anonymous trolls and haters can compile information on me that, while no reasonable person would see that it's bad, could be presented in such a light by a bad faith actor, only for the purposes of hurting me, all behind the safety of anonymity. That is what the supposedly compassionate, harm reduction focused leftoids did to Jordan Peterson when they were shitting on him for his addiction. It's what happened to Sargon, where people keep spreading around the UKIP rape man thing and the depends on the child thing, which is literally just him steelmanning MOCE's position while debating him. It can seem exceptionally cruel when anonymous actors can move to destroy you over nothing, using outright lies, and you can't do anything about it. It's like I said at the beginning of the video, a cry of free speech is the cry of the oppressed, the outsider. The establishment doesn't really need free speech. And this is why a lot of people are free speech extremists when on the fringe, and suddenly become a lot more censorious after their station has been raised. Hell, you can even make the argument that I've done this in some extreme circumstances. For example, while I am still very pro-free speech, and I absolutely do tolerate criticism and mockery of me, I had to purge my Discord of a bunch of retards after Discord sent me an email saying that people had been organizing raids out of my server against other communities. And after I began to investigate some of the side, lesser used channels on my server, I discovered a group of people who didn't actually watch my content at all. They didn't actually give a shit about me or my community. They actively chased away new fans for fun. They posted stuff that was blatantly against Discord TOS, and they were simply using my server as a way to plan out harassment against other servers because they heard I was a free speech guy. And so therefore, they expected I wouldn't come down on them. So I nuked them all into oblivion, and now they sit on a side server crying that I'm actually not pro-free speech at all. The point is, you can have good ideals, but they're always going to be challenged when those ideals impact the real world. Eventually, some ridiculous edge case will cause you to go against your ethics. But at the same time, we also know from the French Revolution, from the Russian Revolution, from countless other examples, that if you step outside of the bounds of ethics every time there's a seemingly good reason to, it's not going to end well for you. So what does that leave us with in regards to Jordan Peterson? I understand his desire here, but I must disagree. Hell, even old Jordan Peterson must disagree, considering the extent to which he himself has written about the virtues of privacy. I'm not directly comparing removing anonymous online accounts to the Chinese surveillance state, with social credit and expiring money, and a phone which tracks you and tells you to report to a government facility if you post the wrong opinions online. Yes, that's actually happening in China right now. It's what they turned their COVID tracking apparatus into. What I'm saying is, there is a real slippery slope here. And unlike a lot of other slippery slopes that people talk about, this one's actually possible. And there's a lot of people here now who want to make it happen. Therefore, I'm not willing to give an inch on this issue. Being anonymous is a necessary component of a free society. And if it means that public figures, including myself, occasionally get made a fool of, then that is a price worth paying. Hey there, Giga Chads. If you're watching this on release day, that's December 8th, 2022, come back to the channel tonight at 7:30 p.m. EST. That's 4:30 for the West Coast and 12:30 in the UK. Sorry, Eurocucks, because tonight is the night of the 2022 Video Game Awards, and I'm going to be streaming them. Get your Mountain Dew and Doritos ready, because yeah, come on, we're all losers here. And let's watch it together. This YouTube channel tonight or my Twitch channel. Either or. I'll see you there. I love you.